Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today we're conducting an interview with Richard Rosenberg. Today is the 5th of August, 2018. We're in Leon Blum 42, Haifa.
Right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Susan, we're interviewing you about your story and about your husband's story.
Yeah.
Let's start with your family. If you can a bit tell us about your heritage and about your parents and where they're from.
I will tell you about my parents. Both of my parents were born in Philadelphia, where I grew up. My mother's parents had come from Russia, but I remember my maternal grandmother who died when I was young, and it never occurred to me to ask questions about her past.
What was the family name of your mother?
My mother's family name was Kaplan. And my father was, his parents came from Hungary, but he was born in Philadelphia, and he was, you've heard of self-hatred?
Yeah.
He did not like Jews. He was a Jew, but he had, as far as he was concerned, it was the foreigners, the ones that talked with their hands, that didn't know English properly, that had no manners. Those were the ones that caused the anti-Semitism. I mean, this was his feeling. I grew up feeling very happy that I did not look Jewish and wished that I wasn't. I had no Jewish education. I was religiously deprived.
You never, like, you didn't know the other Jews in the community?
Yes, all my friends were Jewish because that's the way it was.
Yeah.
In high school, there were fraternities and sororities, and Jews were not accepted or welcome, and so we stuck together. Socially, I was Jewish. But culturally, I was, yeah.
And did you hear stories from your grandparents about their life in Europe?
No.
They came in the beginning of the century. When your parents were born
in Philadelphia, yeah. And I remember my grandfather.
So when did the family come? In the end of the 19th century?
Don't know.
Or the beginning of the 20th century?
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did your father work in?
My father had a real estate business, and my husband, well, that comes later, but when I met my husband, he went to the University of Pennsylvania, and somebody arranged a blind date.
1 second, before we get
okay, I went too fast.
Your childhood, what year were you born?
1924.
24.
I'm old.
1924. So as a teenager, World War II broke out.
Yes.
Now, before that, you told me something about that you had fraternities for Jews, and
what?
Socially you were a Jew because, can you explain, did you feel anti-Semitism as a child?
Oh yes, very much so.
Please
when I was
explain.
in the 3rd grade, I changed schools, and I didn't know anybody, and one girl was nice to me, so I sort of clung to her.
Yeah.
And we were out in the playground, and she said, "See those kids over there?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Don't play with them." I said, "Why? They looked like they were having a wonderful time. I would have been happy to play with them." She said, "They're Jews." I said, "I think I'm Jewish." She said, No, you're not." And I said, I think I am. But she said, No, you're not. But I went home and asked my mother about that. This was in the 3rd grade. My mother said, yes, you're Jewish and you can be very proud. But I wasn't proud. I mean, there was something...
And were there more stories where you, so slowly you befriended only with Jews because of this? Or
well, yes, it seemed, no, it wasn't a conscious thing that I want to be. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be friendly with everybody. I wanted to love everybody and to be loved by everybody.
Yeah. No, but was this a unique example you gave, or did it occur again?
It was there. We all knew it. We all knew it. The gentleman's agreement, the...
Was this, you were middle class?
Upper middle class.
What was
yeah.
your neighborhood?
Suburban, nice house, nice garden, many Jewish people living there. The same kind of Jewish as we were.
Now,
there was a snobism about it.
Okay. Yeah. World War II broke out in 1939. You were 15.
Yes.
What can you tell me about those 5 years of World War II as a teenager, as already a young adult? What do you remember?
I was... I remember being in high school and listening to Franklin Roosevelt speaking, and all of us were... I mean, it had its effect. I remember hearing during those years about the Nazis. We had a German maid who decided to go back to Germany, and I remember my parents trying to persuade her not to. An uncle had left her some money, or I don't know, and I remember her saying, "Oh, Mrs. Stern, das ist just propaganda. Das ist." But she left. She went back, and we heard about the Nazis and what was happening to the Jews, but not completely. I mean, that horror didn't come out till after the war. But I met Dick when I was...
1 second. Can you organize your dress here, your neck? You see it's a bit folded.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Okay.
Before we... Now,
Am I if I'm talking too much?
No, everything is okay.
Okay, you can cut.
So you heard about the Holocaust only about after the war, basically, you say?
Yes. Yes.
About Palestina.
Yes.
Did you hear about it as a teenager?
I knew nothing about it.
Nothing. Was there any Zionistic movement, activity?
Later, when I was married, I married a Zionist who was born in Cleveland with a blue and white flag in his mouth. You know, his grandfather was an early Zionist.
So let's now. What age did you meet your husband?
Dick, I was
his full
the
name,
year
please?
Richard Rosenberg from Cleveland, Ohio. He was born in Chicago at the Great Lakes Naval Base because his father was in the Navy, in the United States Navy.
Okay, where did his family come from? Do you know?
Yes, they were from Russia or Czechoslovakia. The family, his mother's family name was Stashower, and I think there is a place called Stashower.
In Czechoslovakia?
I think so.
And his father was somewhere in Russia?
His father was from Russia.
His father was born in Russia or born in the States?
Born in Russia, but he was very young when they came to the States. They stopped in England first, I think, one of his sisters told me, and then...
His parents came together already as a couple to the States?
Who? My husband's?
Yeah.
No, they met...
They you met in the States?
His father used to take my mother-in-law to kindergarten to help her cross the street. The families knew each other. And
In the States?
in the States, in Cleveland.
Okay. And in what kind of a family did your husband grow up? Culturally?
Conservative Jewish, not only very knowledgeable about Jewish history. There was much Jewish pride and understanding, which had such an effect on me and impressed me. And it was as if he was providing something I was thirsty for. I had felt religiously deprived, and I wanted to know what everybody else knew.
Yeah. 1 second, can you?
Is it?
No, move again. Just, yeah, that's it. Perfect.
All right, stay there.
Okay. What did his father do? Can you tell us again?
His father, he was in the Navy, and then he was also he was president of the Fleet Reserve, which my husband was very proud of. And we have a book somewhere of my father-in-law's presidency of the Fleet Reserve, where I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was something big.
What was his rank?
When he was 15 years old, my father-in-law ran away from home and joined the Navy.
Ran away from in the States?
Home, yes. He had too many sisters, and the family was and his father was very.
Jewish family?
Yes.
Okay.
But not like my mother-in-law's side. Oh, she was a Sunday school teacher. She was the first American-born female Hebrew teacher in the city of Cleveland. That was his heritage.
So both of them were from religious families. His was a bit less.
Right.
Okay. So, and he was in the Navy, in the American Navy.
Yes.
And she was a teacher, you said.
Yes.
First Hebrew. Okay.
And then he got a job with a rubber company. But that was after later years.
Okay. So Richard grew up, was the house a religious house?
Yes. Yeah.
They went to synagogue every Saturday?
Yes. Erev Shabbat was Erev Shabbat, and
so did Richard grew up with a kippah on his head?
No. He put a kippah on his head when he went to synagogue or when he...
But not... did he go to public school or...
Yes, he went to public school, and as a matter of fact, he was... I'm trying to remember the name of it. He was... Because he was very bright, he was sent to a special school. It was a public school, and it was sort of experimental for... What was that called? Anyhow, he was very proud of that fact that he was...
Yeah. And, okay. And then he finishes high school, and where does he go?
He went to he got a scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, which is in Philadelphia, which is how the whole thing started.
And you were studying there also?
I was not studying there, but a mutual friend of my parents, the son of a friend of my parents, friends of my parents, said, hey, there's a party at the fraternity house and a blind date, and I said, no, I don't want a blind date. And he persuaded me, you'll like him, he plays the piano, and at that time I played the piano, and So I agreed to meet Dick Rosenberg, and I had a summer job working.
How old were you?
I was 17, I guess.
And he was...
He was a pen man, 21.
So you met and the relationship began.
The relationship began, yeah. Well, I will tell you that that first date, the relationship began. It wasn't the first date, it was the second date.
This is, you say 17, so this is 1941.
Right.
Okay, 1941. And?
Dick was going, it was summertime, and Dick was accelerating so that he could graduate, so that he could go into the Navy. He was planning to go into the Navy like his father, and...
like his father? He was influenced, that was the reason?
Yes, yeah, and so that, I'm trying to remember, I think it was that first night. We went double date with a friend, his best friend, and a girl that I knew from Philadelphia. And I knew his best friend too, and we had dinner at the fraternity house. And during the course of conversation, Dick said he was going into the Navy, and this girl, who was quite a coquette, said, "Oh, can I be on your ship when you're in the Navy?" And he said, "Yes." And the conversation went on about other things, and we were talking about religion, and Lois said she didn't believe in God. And Dick said, "Oh, you can't be on my ship then if you don't believe in God." And I thought, he believes in God. I mean, my family, it was like a silly thing. There was something wrong about it, and it was something I wanted.
Because your family thought it was silly, you wanted it?
Not because they thought it was silly, because I wanted it.
What was politically your family?
My father was a Republican, and my mother was a Democrat.
In Richard's family, where did he come?
Democrats. I mean, Jews were Democrats in those days.
Yeah. So, you meet. When do you get married?
Oh, well, we had several dates, and I went away to Colby Junior College in New London, New Hampshire. And I have a whole box of letters that I wrote to Dick every day. And at that school, too, I found anti-Semitism. And in my letters,
What was can you give us examples?
Of the anti-Semitism? Well, like during the first week of school, there was a place where you could meet and smoke. In those days, I smoked. And one of the girls said, "You have to be careful where you sit." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you know, there are Jews up here. They're Jewish girls, and you can't tell. They look like everybody else. You can't." I said, "I guess you'll have to move then." But I got a letter. I was waiting for a letter from Dick, and everybody knew I was waiting. I was in love, and I was waiting for a letter. And the day
Where was the school? Where was the college?
New London, New Hampshire.
And you lived there in a dormitory?
Yes.
And he already enlisted?
Oh, yes. He was working.
1941 he enlisted?
He was waiting to be called up.
Yeah.
And while he was working, he was living at home with his parents and working for some kind of a...
And when did he enlist to the army?
When did that come? Well, in the Navy. I'm trying to remember. I think it was before December because still in that year.
1941.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were married in 42, so.
When in 42?
September.
Ah, a year after.
Yeah.
So you knew each other like a year and a half, 2 years, and then you got married.
Yeah.
Now, and he enlisted in the end of 1941.
Something like that.
And was he based still in the States at this time? In the States?
Yes. Well, we had a honeymoon. He was sent to. First of all, he was on the USS Harding, which was a destroyer, and I know he went. When did he come back? And the destroyer was. I've got my. It's hard for me to remember years.
Okay, but until you got married, was he still in the States?
No. No, he had been overseas, and he called my mother in Philadelphia. I was up at school, and he told her that he was being sent to school in the States for 6 weeks, and that time 6 weeks seemed like a lifetime, and that we wanted to get married. He had called me too, and anyhow, I called my mother and she said, yes, I know. The whole, Dick said I should talk to Dr. Sawyer, who was the president of the head of Colby Junior College for girls, and ask if I could come back to school after 6 weeks. I could get married, we could be married. And I remember going over to Dr. Sawyer's house, leaving a note in the dorm. If I get a call, transfer it to. And Dr. Sawyer was very nice, and he said, you know, education is very important, and you can always, but we don't, in those days, married women did not go to college, or at least not that college. And he had if it's really love, it'll wait until after the war, and he had me convinced. I was saying, yes, 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 I understand. And the phone rang, and it was for me, and it was Dick, and we talked, and I hung up and threw myself into my arms around Dr. Sawyer. I said, I'm getting married. So I left school and did not go back. That was my education, but I was a very poor student.
Okay.
So
where did you both live at this point?
Well, Dick was in the Navy and I was at school.
Yeah,
and then we got married in
yeah.
Philadelphia. It was a very quick wedding in the Reform Synagogue.
Reform Synagogue.
Yes, which my parents supported because I thought it was important to support it, but they never went there.
Okay, no, but it's interesting. You said they didn't take any part in the Jewish life, but you say they did support the Reform Synagogue.
They did support the Reform Synagogue.
So they had
They were not a member. They never went. There were no holidays. There was nothing.
Okay. So
But
this is 19. You never celebrated like Pesach? Or,
No. No.
So this is 1942.
Right.
Okay, you get married.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we got married because Dick was being sent to a special school in Portland, Maine. It was the beginning of radar and sonar, and he was to be the communications officer, and he had to learn about this new stuff.
Equipment, yeah.
So we went to Portland, Maine on our honeymoon, and we found it was on, the school was on Great Diamond Island in Casco Bay. Yeah.
Okay. Where did you live in the beginning of your married life?
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
We went to Portland, Maine. We stayed at a hotel. Dick went to work. I went to find a place to live, and I found a place on Casco Island in Casco Bay. It was Great Diamond Island in Casco Bay, which is where the school was. And it was a summer cottage, but it was the beginning of fall. It was beginning to be cold. We had no heat. There was a fireplace. We roughed it in a cabin.
And he came home every day, or was
He came home every day, but he went to school every morning.
And did he get a salary from the Army, from the Navy?
Yeah.
Did you work at this point?
No.
Okay. Please, let's proceed. What happened? What happens next?
What happened next? Well, something nice happened. When we were still at the hotel, before we found the cottage, Dick came home from his first day at work in the Navy, or at school, and he he picked up the telephone book and he started looking, and I kept saying, "What are you looking for?" He said, just a minute, and I was getting annoyed with him. We didn't know anybody in Portland, Maine, and what was he doing? I wanted to tell him about my day and that I found concert tickets and that I was looking for a place. And he called. He said, here it is, Jewish Community Center. And he called a number and he said, my name is Dick Rosenberg. I'm an officer in the United States Navy. I'm here with my wife, and I wonder where we can go. Do we need tickets to go to synagogue for Yom Kippur? Rosh Hashanah we spent in Boston, by the way. We went to synagogue there. It was okay. So they said, "Where are you? Come right over." And I said, I bought concert tickets. And he said, oh, my wife bought concert tickets. They said, come after the concert. We'll wait for you. And we met two couples, and we were taken in. We used to laugh because we were Dick and Susan. And the children didn't know who was Dick and who was Susan. Dick and Susan are coming to our house for dinner on Shabbos. Oh, well, Dick and Susan are coming to our house. Dick and Susan were that was, the whole community took us in.
This was a community of the island, of this island?
No, Portland, the city of Portland, Maine.
Okay, so you were
We
greeted?
slept, we were greeted, we broke the fast, we spent the night.
So you were greeted by the community?
The whole community taken in.
Now for you say you never really felt that part of the Jewish community when you grew up. How did you feel about this?
I was very happy. I thought, isn't this wonderful? It was a lesson to me that you were never a stranger if you were Jewish.
Yeah.
And
did you or Dick, in your house now you started, he kept Yom Kippur, holidays, what did he?
Well, later. I mean, we're still on an island, and I know. And we went to synagogue with our friends for the holidays, and I didn't understand a word, and I had to sit upstairs, and I wasn't very happy there, but I was next to our hostess, and we walked to their home, and then we broke the fast there, and it was beginning.
Okay.
It was beginning.
So, How long were you on this island? What's the name of the island again?
Great Diamond Island. And
How did you go? There was a ferry taking you to...
yes, yes.
How many people lived on this island?
Well, there were other people, but I didn't know them. And our place was a summer cottage. No, it was just a cabin-like cottage.
And the
We
school
had
was
no.
on the island?
The school was on the island, yes. And when I wanted to go into Portland, I'd take a Navy
It was the Navy's ferry?
ferry, yes.
So
And
how many years were you on the island?
how many years?
Well, please
No,
proceed.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
It was a 6-week course.
Okay, and then
And
what?
then we went to New York, and Dick went to the Brooklyn Navy Yard every day, and we had found a boarding house where we could stay. I remember being busy washing his socks and
What was he doing in New York?
I don't know, he was waiting for his ship to come in.
Where did you stay in New York?
In a boarding house, in a room, and I would try to get theater tickets because they were free for officers or free for servicemen, or reduced price. I forget what it was, but I remember standing in line and getting theater tickets for us. So at night we went out on the town and went to theater. And I remember saying goodbye because it wasn't a very long time that his ship did come in.
When did it come? After a few months.
After, yeah. Let's see, we were married in September, I think. I don't really remember. I could look in my diary somewhere.
Okay. But what ship was this?
The USS Harding.
Okay.
It was a destroyer. And in time, he was in the invasion of Normandy. He was communications officer on this ship. And after that invasion of Normandy,
So in 1942, he got on the ship and sailed away?
yes,
overseas. Okay, Normandy is 1944, I think.
that's when, yeah.
Okay, so this 1942 until 1944.
He came back for intervals. I remember going up to Boston. That's why I didn't continue with my education. It was all...
Okay. So, and all this time you stayed in New York?
No, I went home to Philadelphia to my parents.
And he was overseas?
And I got a temporary job at my father's office, yeah.
Okay. So we proceed to 1944. The United States decide to go into the war in Europe.
Well, as I say, the ship was in the invasion of Normandy. And after that, it was converted to a destroyer minesweeper and sent to the Pacific.
Okay.
And
So when did he leave? So you didn't see him for like 2 years or so?
I did see him when the ship was sent to the Pacific. He came home and then went again. I was pregnant. I became pregnant.
What year?
Well, our daughter was born in 44.
So 1943 or so?
Yeah. And
So before he left, before he went overseas? Before
yes,
he went to Europe?
yes. I met his ship in Boston one of the times that they came in after a run, as they called them. And I had a dream, and I dreamed that I was going to die, and everybody said so. And in my dream, I said, I was going to die in 6 months. And in my dream, I said, 6 months? That's not even time enough to have a baby. And when it became I wanted to have a baby before he went away.
Yeah.
So I knew it was stupid, but
So what was the name of your first baby?
Carol Trowan. Carol is married to Selwyn Trowan, who arranged for this.
Okay. So Carol, born in 1943.
44.
What, so Dick went to Europe, he was in Normandy.
And then he went to the Pacific, and his ship
Yeah.
was hit by a kamikaze. And his best friend was killed. There were many wounded and killed.
Yeah.
And he was fine.
Okay.
And he had the why me guilt. And also the feeling that I was saved for some reason. My life has to be important.
Yeah.
It has to, I have to, there's a meaning to
Yeah.
my being alive.
Yeah.
So that was
This was in 1945 already?
when the war was over. What year was the war over?
1945.
Okay. He came home with that in mind. He had a job with my father, and he did not like the real estate business. He had been trained at Penn as an industrial engineer, but my father, with his attitude towards Jews, if somebody came into the office with an accent, he was turned over to Dick. This was...
He worked with the Jews.
Yes. He didn't like it. He didn't like my father. And,
Your father and your husband didn't go
and I
along?
mentioned that because when Dick was a Zionist and a member of the Zionist organization, and he was asked to form a group of young veterans who were Zionists, and he became very involved, and he was collecting ammunition or guns or whatever it was.
So let's hear about this. He came home, he was already around 26, 7 or so?
Probably. I'm bad with numbers. I can't do
And
that.
he came home. Did he talk to you about Zionism before the war, during the war when you met? He already told you about Zionism?
No. I knew that he was a Zionist, that this was something he was an activity that I thought, okay. And then he formed this group, and they
1
used...
second, so let's hear. He comes
Okay.
home from the war. Tell us about this group. What are we talking about?
We're talking about a group in Philadelphia of young veterans that Dick had been asked to start. He was given the names and addresses, and
These were
he
Jewish
got in
soldiers.
touch with these people, Jewish veterans, and asked to form a Zionist group.
These are only from Philadelphia or from other places?
Philadelphia,
Okay.
yeah.
And he basically...
He formed the group, and they used to meet at our house. And I thought, oh,
How many people were there?
I can't remember. Not a big group. Probably a million. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe
What was
we were
the-
husbands and wives, and it was a social group. And we read books about Israel, and we talked about Israel, and we studied Hebrew for a little while. There was a rabbi that you know.
What was the name for the group?
Brigadier Kish.
Why Brigadier Kish?
I don't know who he was, but I know he was important in the history of the Zionists and the state.
Okay. So in the beginning, they just meet and talk.
In the
Learn about
beginning,
Israel.
yeah.
And how does it proceed?
Well, it proceeds with Dick because I think if he had been happy in the real estate business, he wouldn't have been so active.
Yeah.
But I know that he went to New York to meetings and he met Teddy Kollek, and that's when Teddy Kollek asked him. Dick came home one night from one such meeting. We had 2 little girls by then.
What was the name of the other one?
Betsy, Batzion, and Rachel, when we came to Israel with them, but it was Betsy and Carol.
And when was she married? When was she married? When was she born?
Betsy was born in 46.
Okay. So, he goes to meetings in New York with Teddy Kollek.
Yes, and Teddy...
What does he tell you about the meetings?
He came home and he said, I have been asked to come to Israel as an advisor to the Israeli Navy. And I told Teddy Kollek, well, I'm no expert.
What was his rank?
He was a lieutenant, junior grade.
Like a low rank?
Yes.
Yeah.
He said, I'm no expert.
And he was in communication?
Communications. Teddy Kollek said to him, I know you're no expert, but of all the men in the United States Navy, how many were Jewish? So it's a lesser number. And of those, how many were officers? And of those, how many were communications officers? And of those, how many had the sea duty and the experience that you had? And of those, how many speak Hebrew? Because he did, because his mother was a Hebrew teacher. And of those, how many would go if we asked them? I mean, we know you're no expert, but so he came home with this, and he said to me, it was up to me, that if I said no, it would be no.
This is what year?
1948, I guess.
This is already 48.
This is already 48 when there was
So
this.
this is already the wars
Yeah.
took place already in Israel.
Yes.
So listen, before we get to this meeting, you said something about ammunition they collected.
Yeah.
What? Can you
Guns
say?
and for Israel. He would take them to me. It was secretive. It was.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I didn't like it. I had children in the house. I didn't like guns.
Weapons.
Huh?
He himself bought weapons?
He collected them from people, from veterans. I don't know. I know his father helped him in that endeavor.
So he and his father did this? This was the...
Yeah.
They...
I imagine there were a lot of people collecting arms for Israel.
So you just got information about people that have weapons?
Yeah, because it was so secret, I didn't know much about it.
But where did he keep the weapons?
In our house somewhere.
You don't know where?
No.
So what did you know? How, like, you saw him coming home with...
Well, yeah.
Parents with weapons? And
I didn't see much or know much.
how many...
But I just know that he did do that.
How many weapons do you know?
I don't know.
And this was already in 46, 47?
Probably.
And do you know, who did he send it to? How did he send it?
I know that I think he took it to New York.
And
Took them to New York to some collection place.
And you don't know who took it?
No.
Did he ever talk to you about it afterwards? You know,
No.
tens of years afterwards, did he explain to you
No.
how many?
No. It was no big thing. It
You
was
never-
just something he did, and
Well, it is quite a big thing.
yeah, but it wasn't with him. It was he
But
did
you
what he
never-
did.
you never talked
I was
about it?
never a part of it. No.
So he was already, when he got home, this means he was already an active,
He was an active, very active. Yes.
this is serious, to collect weapons.
Oh, yeah.
and to-
Yes, he was very involved in the Zionist organization of America.
Do you know of any other people he was connected to? You said Teddy Kahl, or do you know other names?
Rose somebody or other, then I forget her name. She was big in Philadelphia in the organization. I know that when Israel became a state, Dick presented the first Israeli flag. Is that your phone?
No.
Ranji? It must be his, and he must be in my room and not hearing it.
Here, stop.
All right.
So, what were you going to say?
I don't know.
Okay. So.
Where were we?
So, now.
Yes, that he presented the first Israeli flag at the Rayborn Plaza in Philadelphia to we have a picture, and there was a newspaper article, and he was very proud of that moment.
Okay. So, 1948, let's see, you are 24.
Two children.
Your husband is like 27, 28.
27.
And he tells you about the meeting with Teddy Kahl. Now this is 48, which means the war is already taking place. What do you talk about the war? Do you talk about Israel?
I'll tell you the conversation over tea that night. He came home and he said, I've been asked to go, and I really want to, but if you say no, it's no. And I thought, if I say no, I mean, of course it's no. We have two little girls. Is he crazy? What is he talking about? It's dangerous. It's, thinking about it, not all at the same time, I thought, if I say no, well, he also put in that maybe this is why my life was spared. Maybe, I mean, it was part of it. If I say no, it'll be, I wanted to, but she wouldn't let me. I didn't want it to be like that. And so I said, well, I'll go, but only for 1 year, and then we'll come back and live happily ever after in Philadelphia. That was so it was yes. And
what did you know about Israel at the time?
Nothing. I didn't even know where it was. I nothing. I'm not very bright, and I don't have an intellectual curiosity. I don't know numbers. I wasn't a good student.
Did you talk with your family?
Oh, my mother was against it. She said, I will do everything I can to dissuade you from going.
And your father?
Same. Because Zionism, I mean, he was a member of my father was a member of the American Council for Judaism, I think it was called, which was an anti-Zionist group of Jews who believed that if the Jews had a state, then the anti-Semites would, I mean, Catholics didn't have a state, this was their argument. Christians didn't have a state. Why should the Jews have a state? And then we'd be told to go there. And so he was very much against it. So,
Pack your luggage.
what?
When do you leave the States?
Well, that's another story. We waited and waited and waited, and I thought, oh, they must have forgotten, waited to be called. We didn't leave the States until 49.
49, okay.
Yes, we came in March of 49.
So the war is already...
Yeah, the war was over.
Towards the end, okay.
Right.
So all of you get on a ship.
We were on a ship to France, and from France we took a train to Switzerland, and from Switzerland it was all very, it was arranged, but then from Switzerland we flew on a little plane over the Alps with no oxygen, and it was a terrible trip. And by the time we got to Israel, it was warm, and a nice, friendly hostess greeted us. And I thought, I'm never leaving, it's too much trouble.
Where did you get to?
To Lud, the airport.
You flew in?
We flew in this plane without oxygen. No.
From Switzerland?
From Switzerland.
Okay. So what happens after you land?
After we land, they started to confiscate our cigarettes, and Dick was fighting with everybody, and he had a letter that said he was very important, and nobody looked at it, and he was...
Nobody waited for you?
Nobody waiting. They finally did send two...
Did you pay for getting here, or they organized it?
No, they must have organized it. They must have.
Okay.
No.
So you get here.
We get here, and we're put in the Carmelio Court Hotel in Haifa. And
So he gets in touch with
we stopped at on the way. Two army cars picked us up, one for our luggage and one for us. And we came to Haifa and stopped at Stella Maris, where naval headquarters were. And Dick went in for a few minutes, and two officers, I forget their names, came out with us to the hotel. And we had everything was closed, but they gave us food, and we went to sleep. That was the first night.
Two little girls.
With the two little girls, yes.
Okay, and you sleep in a hotel. So what happens in the next few months?
All right, we stayed in the hotel far too long. It was awful. And I have it all written down in the story, but I was complaining a lot until I realized that it wasn't easy for Dick either. And my complaining, he was going to work every day, going to naval headquarters.
In Stella Maris?
Stella Maris, yeah.
And what did he do there? He
tried
to teach them his knowledge?
I know he had one story. He said he was so used to the United States Navy, where everything was very orderly, and he called his office one day, and a girl answered, and she said, she was sort of fresh and not very cooperative. He said, "Do you know who you're speaking to?" And she said, "No." And he said, "This is your commanding officer." And she said, "No." So he thought that was very funny. And an indication of the adjustments he had to make.
Did he speak Hebrew too?
He spoke Hebrew, yes.
Okay, so his Hebrew improved probably.
Yes, he worked very hard at it. So I did not, but I was starting to say that my complaining was having enough. He said, well, all right, we'll go back then. And I said, no, we've come for a year. We have to stay for a year. And I realized it was partially not only because it was hard for him, but because I was making it hard for him. I mean, that's how it was.
Okay.
And I also partially thought, if we go back, everybody in the family will say, we told you so. We told you not to go. So I didn't want it to end that way.
Okay.
So
where did you move to live in?
The Navy put us into a house in Wadi Nisnas in the Arab Quarter. It was a building held by the custodian of enemy property. And it was a nice flat. We had 3 bedrooms really, and 1 bath, and a kitchen, and a living room.
And did you pay anything, or this was like?
No, the Navy put us there.
Okay,
and we gradually began to make friends, which was very important to me, to know people.
And your daughter started.
We became a part of the Anglo-Saxon community.
Of Haifa.
Of Haifa, yes.
And your daughters went to Ganim.
And my daughter, that's how I started to learn Hebrew. Our oldest used to translate for me. And once I scolded her for something she had done, and she said, all right then, I won't translate for you. So that was, she was angry with me, so that was, held it. But then when our baby was born,
when was that?
We had a baby boy. The doctor said, see, in America they could only give you girls, we give you a son. So that was...
when was he born?
He was born in 1949.
When? What, do you remember the month?
November.
What's his name?
Danny Rosenberg. There was an article in the paper. He was born at Imahut Hospital, which was a hospital a small maternity hospital in Haifa, owned and run by Dr. Rosenberg, who was married to the Rosenbergs.
Okay. Now, and so this is already November. Do you work at this time?
No, I never worked. I had to deserve my good fortune, but I never worked.
Okay. Do you know what Richard did?
But that was my third child, so you know what...
Yeah, of course. Do you know what Richard did? Did he come back every day? Come home?
Oh, yes. He came home to Casaria Street, and then in time there was a whole thing that I'm not remembering clearly, where Dick was sick. He had some sort of skin disease, and they took him to the hospital. And while he was gone, it was they said, "What? You put an American family in Wadi Nisnas? Are you crazy?" And anyhow, some sailors came to the door and said we were moving to the Carmel. And my children had the measles or something. I don't know. I said, I can't, but we did. They moved us into an apartment on 14 Kabirim Street.
Kabirim?
Yes, which was, and it was like being on a summer vacation. It was the view and the fresh air, and all my friends lived on the Carmel, not down in Wadi Nisnas, and so it was wonderful. And then Dick came home, and he was better, and they had put together that it was psychological. He had eczema, and he was scratching himself, and that it came from nerves.
So he felt better?
So he felt better, yes.
He was in the hospital?
He was in the hospital. He was hospitalized. It was that bad.
Yeah. Do you know what he did? Until when was he in the Navy?
He was in the Navy from 1949 to 1956, I think.
And what?
And he built up. I have a lot of his material that he wrote about those times. If you'd like to see it.
But in general, what was his job?
Communication. Chief of communications.
In the Navy.
In the Navy.
So he's basically one of the people who.
He organized he taught them what he knew.
Yeah. Okay. So, and until 1956. So I understand that you didn't go back after a year. You said
No.
you would go back.
No, I was very happy here. And Alliance Tire Company was being built. And they were just looking for it was an American-Israeli business venture. They were looking for an American who knew the business and spoke the language. And so that was Dick. And so he was controller of.
This is 1950.
Whenever it opened, 56. He went back to the States, and I with him, to learn the tire business. And I stayed in Philadelphia and in Cleveland with our children, and then we came back. By that time I was pregnant with our fourth.
1 second, I just want to understand. So he left the army, he felt, do you remember?
He said he felt he had given all he knew, all he had to give, and he didn't want to spend his life trying to fight some other guy you know.
By the way, when you come to Israel, do you know, like, politically, what are you related at this time? Like, your husband, Richard, what was he more to, politically, where was he in these days of 49 to 50, the 50s? Mapai or?
Yes, I think Mapai. Was that?
That's like Ben-Gurion?
Ben-Gurion, and yes, they were all heroes.
Okay.
Rabin and Peres and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 1956, he retires from the army.
Learned the tire business and became controller of Alliance Tire.
In Israel?
In Hadera. But we decided to stay in Haifa because that's where our children had friends and where we had friends, and.
Yeah. And you have a fourth child in 19?
We had a fourth child born in Cleveland while Dick was learning the tire business in Dayton.
What's the name of the child?
The fourth child is Michael Ilan.
Okay. Did your family come and visit you all these years?
When our fifth child was born.
That was the first time they came?
The first time, yeah. And
did you have other family in Israel?
No.
And did
No.
Dick have?
What?
Did Dick have?
No, Dick did not either. No.
So you stay in Haifa, and Dick works in Alliance.
Yes.
He's the head of Alliance in Hadera.
The head was Joseph Teicher, who later became president of Haifa University. He's also gone now. But Dick and Joe were the heads of Alliance.
In Israel? Or
in Israel, in Hadera, yeah.
So you basically became like a businessman?
Well, it was what he had been trained for, industrial, and he was an industrial.
But he was was he an owner of the company in Israel? Or?
No, it was owned by people by Dayton Rubber Company and investors in Israel. Oh, I can't remember the names of
So
them.
he was like
the people here.
Hired manager.
Yes, yeah.
How many years did he work in the company?
He was here for 5 years in the company. And we probably would have stayed forever, but my father was dying.
Okay.
And the obvious hit me like a revelation. Oh, we don't live forever. Oh, my parents don't have any, their grandchildren are deprived and
Well, how many, do you have brothers and sisters?
I have had 2 sisters, and I was the youngest girl in a family of 3 children.
So what happens in 1962? What happened?
Well, is that when we went back?
I don't know. You said you
Yep.
worked in Alliance for 5 years.
Yeah. So we're up to 62. Anyhow, we went back. And another thing, Dick had, I'm not telling you everything important. Dick went back to learn the tire business, or it was a board of directors meeting. And he went back with ultimatums because he wanted a trip for his wife every 2 years, and he wanted demands. There were demands that the children's education should be paid for, that whatever. Housing. We were living with 5 children in a 2-bedroom flat, you know.
Still in Kabirim?
Still in Kabirim. Yeah, we wanted a house. And he didn't want to have to ask his father to pay for it. And so he had these demands, and he thought to himself, well, wait a minute, I've made he was told, well, when we have the board meeting, we'll talk about it and we'll let you know. He thought, well, suppose they say no. So he was beginning to think about the idea of coming back.
To the States?
Also, it was not only that my father was sick and I was worried about him, but
1 second. Okay, so you go to the States. By the way, when was your 5th child born?
Our 5th child was born, let me think. Our 5th child was born in Haifa before we went to the States.
What year?
It must have been 56 that he was born.
He went in 62 to the States.
Oh.
Michael, you said, was born in 56.
Okay.
Who's the 5th child?
5th child is John, who he died, by the way, of pancreatic cancer when he was 50-some years old. He was born in March of 1962. Does that sound right?
Well, he was born in the States already?
No, Here. Before, he was a baby when we went to the States.
Okay. For how many years did you go to the States? Or for how long?
Well, we went back forever, we thought.
Okay. And in the end, how long did you stay?
In the end, we stayed until 72. It was the 6-day war that we thought, what the hell are we doing here in Indiana? I mean...
You lived in Indiana?
We were in Indiana by then. We lived in Dayton and we lived in Indiana, and we came back to Israel.
72?
Yeah.
Not in 67? Well,
72, right.
72. So you decided to get back because of, again?
Because we realized that we belonged here. It was just impossible.
So when do you come back to Haifa?
We came back to Haifa, sure.
Were your kids happy? What did they think?
Well, the nest was empty by then. Our youngest had come before us.
No, the youngest was 10 years old. You said...
No. In 72?
You said John was born in 62, so he was
Well,
10.
he wasn't.
Okay.
I told you I get mixed up. I'm sorry.
Okay. The eldest girls were already...
John was born when... I was born in 1924.
Right.
John was born when I was 30 years old.
Okay, so that's 54.
There you go.
54. And he was the youngest?
He was the youngest.
Oh, so okay. So by 54, everyone was born. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
By 72, he came back to Israel because he was born here and he wanted to. He joined the army,
in 72?
not the Navy, but the army.
In 72.
Yes.
He was the only one to join.
He came before 72. When he graduated high school, I think it was the only thing he could do that would make his father proud of him if he didn't go to the university.
Did the other kids also go to the Israeli army?
No.
He was the one.
But Betsy came back. She now lives in Jerusalem. She's been there ever since. She was the first to come back because after 1 year of college, she said, "This place has gray walls and a gray atmosphere, and I have a pink soul." So she came to Israel to find what it was that she remembered from her childhood that she so loved about it here. And she's been here ever since. She went to Hebrew. She went to a kibbutz and then Magan Michael, and then she went to Hebrew University. And
she lives now in Jerusalem?
She lives in Jerusalem.
And the other kids, where do they live?
Carol is married to Selwyn, and they have 6 children, and all of their children here, and they live in Beersheba, in Omer, north of Beersheba.
They also live in Israel.
Yeah. Carol, Betsy, Danny and Michael live in America.
Okay. So in 72 you get back. Does Dick take any part in the war?
Oh, he wanted to. He called Teddy Kulick. He wanted to, and he was finally asked by Elbit, I think, or one of the companies in down by their manager was in the army. Could he come and manage? So he did that. That was his war effort. And I drove for the police, they were asked if anybody had transportation. I drove the police around on there. And once my war effort, somebody called me and said, "I'm so-and-so from Haifa University. I was told that you're the kind of woman who would be willing to drive to the Golan Heights with food for the soldiers." So I didn't know I was going to drive somebody else's car with a gear shift that I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we did it. It was up to the bathhouse on the Golan, and all the soldiers came and oh, you're from Haifa, call my mother, call my sister, call my brother, call my girlfriend. You know, there was a carload of us with food and.
And where was your son during the war?
And my son was down in the Sinai. And then later, I got a call from some woman who said, "My son is with your son, and your son is all right." anyhow, he got through the war. He was wounded, actually, by friendly fire.
Yeah. Where was he in India?
He was on a tank.
And so you get to Haifa. Where do you live at this point? At 72?
We rented an apartment from a professor and his wife who were on sabbatical. So we had their furnished apartment for a year, and that gave us a year to find housing. And we found a villa right near, on the way to Kabirim,
yeah, on
Kadima Street. And it was big enough to fit our furniture and everything that came. And we stayed there for 7 years until the owner died and his heirs wanted to sell, and we didn't want to pay their price. And then we found this place, and that's...
Wonderful place. What did they do? Did he work? What did he do for the... Afterwards, where did he work? He got his doctorate at the Technion, and he also taught there. What did he, doctorate in what?
In business management, or I think there was, he did his thesis on it had something to do with the decision-making process. That when in the States, he was co-owner of a manufacturer of industrial drains, and they discovered when they had their meetings to decide how to do things that it would be wise to include the workers who knew about things, in some cases more than the management did. And it worked very, very well. So he wrote his dissertation on that subject. I forget the exact title of the... Listen, part of this is senility too. I'm forgetting things.
You remember a lot.
In the decision-making process.
So he got his doctorate in
at the Technion. Yes, and taught there. He taught business management, and because they know at the Technion now that engineers have to know how to manage, and also I forget what I was going to say.
So this was already 73, 74?
Yes, well, when we came back,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Until when did he teach? He worked there full time?
He worked there full time until he was retirement age. What is that, 70?
Something like that, so that's around the 80s? Somewhere in the 80s?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And from the 80s, how was the pension years?
The pension years, he worked for quite a while as an advisor to, some English university that was starting a university here, or I don't know, I can't remember where he used to travel, and I can't remember the name. And I went with him to Coventry once because it was Coventry University, I guess, that was starting he was advising them or helping them or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Or teaching or...
Yeah. And how was the life in Haifa since then?
It was good. It was good. We love it here.
Yeah.
Loved it. I still love it here. Even though it's, without Dick, but he was such a full part of my life. I was not such a full part of his, but
When did he pass away?
I think it was 2011.
7 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
How many grandchildren do you have?
Oh, we have 17 grandchildren and 39 great-grandchildren, and we're expecting 40 and 41 this coming year. And not only that, but my oldest great-granddaughter is expecting my first great-great-grandchild.
Your oldest
Great-granddaughter is pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
you're gonna have a granddaughter of your granddaughter?
I'm going to have the granddaughter of my granddaughter, yes.
Wow.
Her first grandchild, she's very excited.
Is your family, are they religious or what's the...
No. I think we just love children. Yeah, Carol and Selwyn have 6. By the way, their youngest is a photographer. He is a filmmaker. He went to, what's its name, school in Jerusalem.
Sam Spiegel.
Yes.
What's his name?
A.B. Trowan.
A.B.?
Trowan.
Okay. How do you fill your time these days?
Well, Monday mornings I go to a group, I get a lift. It was very bad when Dick sold my car because I had a near accident, and he said, that's it. So he probably saved my life or the lives of other people, but I thought I was very angry with him. But I get around in taxis, or friends pick me up and take me, and the Monday mornings is an Emunah group, which is a group of religious women who study Bible or study.
Yeah.
And that's still something I lack, knowledge that I lack, and I love the group very much. And I write poetry, or I don't know if you call it poetry, but it's personal, it doesn't rhyme, it has simple language, my language, and it has been published in some literary magazines and anthologies, and I have self-published. The first collection of my poems Dick had published for my 70th birthday.
This is in English?
In English, yes. And he also had published for my 80th birthday. So when he wasn't here for my 90th birthday, I had my own published. I did it myself. And there have been there are 5 books in all so far, and I'm still writing poetry.
Wonderful.
What I need to, I don't know, but...
Wonderful. And you have a lot of family, so you're active in the family?
Family, I'm active, and I'm active with a poets group. It's called Voices, of poets who live in Israel and write it in English. And they're all over the country, but in Haifa we have a group, and we meet once a month at each other's homes and read our poems to each other and critique. I mean, they're the only people I know who care as much, where a comma belongs, or it's.
Yeah.
So I'm busy with that, and Hadassah has a group of English-speaking people here. They meet once a month, and I'm on the board because they said they were going to die, that everybody they were tired and they needed new blood and they needed new people to work. So I volunteered to be program chairman.
So how many you've been doing that for a long time?
This is the 2nd year, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to resign and say we need volunteers for.
So your time is quite full. Yeah.
My time is full. It's as busy and as empty as I like it.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about that we didn't mention, maybe?
Well, I think that Dick Rosenberg was a great man, and I don't think I've conveyed that, but...
No, you said very important things here. The story about collecting weapons in the States, and the story about moving here after the conversation with Teddy Kollek. These are very interesting for our project. This is very, very important.
I have memorabilia of pictures with government
so we can,
people.
I'll take a few pictures. I'll take a few pictures.
You'll take that. All right.
So, to end the interview, what would you like to wish for your kids, your family, maybe for the people of Israel in the future?
You know what? I have everything I wish, and I'm so grateful. I'm so very grateful. I don't, as I said, I never had to earn my living, but I feel I want to deserve it. And I feel I've been so lucky. So that's...
Well, I would like to thank you very much for the interview.
It's been a pleasure.
And only health and happiness.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Same to you. And I didn't ask you whether you're